Hello, everyone, and welcome to the fireside. This is the first edition, and keep in mind, everyone, this first session will be recorded and then will also be uploaded to the YouTube channel. And in case people who are not able to join the session or the time zone just doesn't fit for everyone, and in this session, everyone is free to talk. So please, if you just want to join in on the conversation, you can just feel free to unmute yourself and then join in on the conversation with Software Cloud. And then this session will be hosted by Software Cloud, aka Sayuri. So, okay, so before we start, can everyone check if you can hear me clearly? And also if you can hear her clearly. So if you have any if you have any technical issues, just let us know in the general. And also, okay, so as you will see by now, the general chat has been renamed to the fireside. So this will be the official channel that we use for everyone who are not able to speak or just want to join but not prefer speaking. You can just speak in the fireside. And also at the same time, we will have a Q&A session at the very back. So if you have questions, you can save it for last. You can just remember it, and then at the last, if she wants to receive questions, you can just ask in the fireside or just speak. And after the session, we'll just ask everyone how you feel about this. So if you have any opinions or suggestions, just let us know, okay? And so take it away, Software
Okay,
Cloud.
so hello guys. I'm gonna do my best to pretend that I'm not nervous. So I guess I will start with what I guess inspired me to do these because James had asked me if I had wanted to be a voice event hoster or hostess, and I was like, sure, but I don't really know what I want to talk about. So a little backstory about me. Um, I have ADHD, anxiety, and depression. So yeah, fun times. Having just one of those is already hard enough as it is. Having two is worse, and having all three is hell. So it's made school really, really challenging for me. Um, Freshman year, oh my goodness, I was all over the place. What sleep schedule? What homework? Never heard of her. Like I never, I never did I did barely anything on time, and I can vividly recall way too many nights. Um, I can vividly recall way too many nights spent up at like 2 a.m., 3 a.m. working on an essay that I should have worked on like the week before it was due. Um, Sophomore year was so I like to think that sophomore year was just depression, but that kind of popped up because of my ADHD. Because ADHD, if it goes untreated, it can cause other symptoms. Because if you don't know you have ADHD, then you think that something is wrong with you, and that's exactly what happened. I was like, because I had done, I was a, I entered school as a psych major, and I had already done, I did, I went in as a psych major because I wanted to do like more in-depth research on a lot of um these different like mental health disorders and stuff like that. And so that means that like by this time I already had a pretty good amount of knowledge on at least ADHD, anxiety, and depression. And I was like, whoa, like this sounds a lot like me. But at the same time, like it's not like officially me. So like is is there something wrong? Is it just me? I don't know. So there was always, because I didn't have that official diagnosis, there was always that tiny voice in the back of my head that was like, oh, it's probably just you. You probably just need to try harder, all of that. So the main reason that my anxiety, or not anxiety, my depression and ADHD spiked was because I was taking this chemistry class. And honestly, I was that weirdo in high school that genuinely liked chemistry. But I think that's also because I had a fantastic teacher. But sophomore year of college, which was, I just finished my junior year, so 2 years ago, I had, oh my goodness, I had the worst chemistry teacher ever. It was, imagine if you like, if you take a class that's like a part one and a part two. So you take one semester and you take the other one the next semester. Imagine if when you start that part two, the professor gives you like a review of all the stuff that you did in part one so that you don't feel like completely lost when you start part two. That was how she would teach the entire class. But like, this is for new stuff that we're all like learning basically. And it was just awful. I didn't understand what was going on. I didn't have a great teacher. My ADHD was all over the place, and my depression just skyrocketed. It was terrible. Junior year, it wasn't as bad. So I just finished my junior year. So junior year, it wasn't as bad, but it was still very much prevalent. But because it wasn't as bad, I was able to actually take the time to go and do some research and figure out, what's going on, what can help me, and stuff like that. And it I ended up finding a whole lot of information that seriously helped me, and it's something that I wanted to share with you guys, because I wish somebody had been able to share this with me when I was struggling. And I'm the type of person that, like, if I see somebody struggling with something and I've been there and I know that I can help them with something, I can't really stay silent. Like, I try to be as like tactful about it as possible, but I just like can't not say anything. So so where most of this started, I was watching this YouTube channel called How to ADHD. And this channel, a lot of the places where I found the information that I'm going to be sharing with you guys, in this voice event and other voice events, they're designed for people with maybe very specific disorders. So actually, both of the sources, one is a blog, one is a YouTube channel. Both of them were specifically designed for people with ADHD. But in my opinion, that can be better than any other like advice you can find, especially if most of it is written by neurotypicals. Both the blog and the YouTube channel are created by people who actually have the disorder that they're trying to help other people with. You should link it and pin it somewhere. Yeah, I'm going to do that. I have a surprise for you guys that I'll tell you about at the end of the voice event, and I'm trying so hard not to say anything about it, but it is related to that. So the YouTube channel, the video that I was watching was called "Am I Lazy, Stupid, Messy, Flaky?" And I've watched videos from this channel like a gazillion times, but there were some that I didn't watch. No particular reason, sometimes you just don't watch videos on a YouTube channel because you just don't. But one day something just clicked. I think I was at work and maybe I was a little too bored for my usual videos. I don't know. And so I watched the video, and even though it was stuff that I knew like already, it just hearing it again is probably just what needed to happen. So I'm gonna kind of give you like an overview of the video. So, well, a lot of people, I'm pretty sure there's several people in this voice event right now. You definitely don't have to identify yourself if you don't feel comfortable. But I know that there's at least one of you besides me that has either ADHD, anxiety, or depression, or maybe a combination of two or all three. And all of these medical conditions, they come with symptoms that hinder a person's ability to do stuff without much difficulty. The problem is, like I had said earlier, many people don't know that they have this like medical condition. So they always think, I don't know, maybe it's just me because somebody hasn't specifically told them that you have this thing. And now people are they're so, what's the word for it? Adamant's not really the word, but I guess they're so quick to instantly assume that somebody is like self-diagnosing or whatever, when in reality they're just like speculating, and they've probably done a lot of research on like their own selves. People are so quick to judge that they're self-diagnosing and like shut down everything that they say, that instead of like, instead of deciding, hey, I feel like I have this thing, so let me try and see, if these tools and strategies for other people that have this thing work for me. um they feel, even though nobody's watching them, they still feel like they're doing something wrong when they go and do that. So a lot of them don't. um so then they start asking themselves, it's probably something I did, are you sure you gave yourself time to study, stuff like that. For some reason, getting that diagnosis is the only thing that seems to let the brain understand, like, oh, like, it's not just my fault. Take it from me. I got diagnosed with all three of those this past December. And for the past, oh gosh, I don't even, like, since my last 2 years of high school, since around then, I had always suspected that I had at least some part of all three of the disorders that I got diagnosed with. But even so, like, all three of those, I was like, I don't know, maybe it's just me. And I had known, I've been doing research for years at this point, basically. Um, it's not like I just picked a random disorder, it's not like those people who go on WebMD, search up a headache, and then it's like, oh, you have cancer, like, it wasn't even like that. It was like, I've been doing extensive research and like trying to find so many symptoms, trying to find as many as I have, and I was like, this matches me perfectly. But for I guess I'm gonna say 4 or 5 years that I went without that diagnosis, there was always this little voice in the back of my head that was like, oh, maybe it is just you. And because of the stigma around mental health that just insists on existing, it can be hard to go and get a diagnosis, especially when everyone else around you is unsupportive. um i I had told my mother that I wanted to go and get like, a mental health screening to see if there's anything wrong with me, and she kept insisting that I was fine. But I knew I wasn't. I knew that it wasn't just my fault. Like, part of me was saying, if it was just you, and if it was so easy for you to just do this thing, you would have done the thing by now. But I had to wait until I went to college, and then basically make my own medical decisions, before I finally got the diagnosis. And at this point, I think my mother was finally starting to realize like the severity and the extensiveness of what I had been telling her since high school, that she was finally like, okay, let's take you. And I went, and sure enough, I got the diagnosis. Um, so that actually leads into my next point, because if a mental health condition goes untreated for too long, it can cause others to pop up. So instead of having one, you end up with three. So you know, that that's exactly what happened with me. I was so frustrated that I couldn't just do the thing. Like, I would treat myself like I was Nike and try to just do it, but I just I just couldn't do the thing. So I ended up with depression, like I said, sophomore year, because um, no matter how hard I tried, my grades just kept dropping. And I would study my booty off for like 2 hours, you know, every single day, and I'm still pulling like a 70 something on the test. And then junior year was more of like the anxiety type of thing. Because I didn't want to go to class. I didn't want to go to class because I knew that my brain wasn't going to focus, and I knew that I wasn't going to get anything out of it, so I was just wasting time. I I wanted to just all I wanted to do was just be in my room, in my bed, scrolling through like Instagram all day. Um, just out of not wanting to try, because I knew it wasn't going to be it wasn't going to be productive if I actually went. Whereas at least, if I stayed out of something, nobody can have any expectations of me, so I can't disappoint anyone, right? So Yeah, so if there's anyone in here that went through what I went through but actually got the diagnosis, before the diagnosis, you probably thought to yourself numerous times, everyone else seems to be able to do this thing without having such a hard time, so why can't I? So, in the video that I watched, the creator of how to ADHD, her name is Jessica McCabe. Uh, if you've heard that name but not the YouTube channel before, you probably watched her TED Talk. Um, so when we start talking to ourselves like this usually looks like guilt. And you've probably heard of guilt phrases before. Most of them start with I should. And those, oh my goodness, you guys, those pervaded and still pervade, not as much, thank the Lord. Um, those pervaded my entire academic experience just about the entire time that I was in school. It was always, oh, I shouldn't have gone out to eat with my friends last night, or I should have studied harder, or I gave myself all day to study and I didn't, but I should have. That is what my Sundays looked like. Um, because I would wake up on Sunday, right? I have literally the entire day to do stuff. When do I start? 5 p.m. Like, really? Like, that's not enough time. Like, you can probably do that in high school. You can't do that in college because, well, I mean, you can. It's just highly unadvised because you're not going to have time to do all of the the demanding workload that everyone expects of you in college. It's not enough time, especially if you're like not in a major like I don't know, like maybe like music or art or something. And I say that because um at least with music, I don't know. I don't know how to say this without sounding like assuming, because I know that music students and art students can have quite the workload sometimes, but their workload is slightly different from like those who are like in the sciences, where it's like, you can't afford to mess up this titration or you're gonna mess up the whole freaking experiment. So yeah. So the other thing that Jessica mentions, let's speak English, why don't we? The other thing that Jessica mentions is that, after several times, and I'm looking at the Discord chat right now, and a lot of you are saying, OMG, this is me, this sounds like me. So I'm gonna go ahead and assume that you guys have tried a gazillion and 1,000 times to just get in a gear and start working, and you guys just keep like, I guess for lack of a better word, failing over and over and over. Am I right? Yep. Yep, that is exactly what happened to me, and I think that that's what made my depression skyrocket in sophomore year, because I thought that I was trying and trying and trying, and I just wasn't getting the results that I wanted. My parents used to blame it on the fact that I used like technology a lot, and the fact that I would always try to listen to music when I study. And I always tell them, I'm like, look, you can put me in a room with no windows and no doors and just my book, and I promise you I will stare at the wall for an hour. Like, I'm not gonna focus. It's not happening. So when we hit this failure over and over and over, this is where shame comes in. So instead, we start feeling like it's not like our actions that's a problem. So it's not the fact we went out that we went out the night before. It's not the fact that we were on our phone. It's not the fact that we were on our computers. It's just us. So remember when I said that the people in your environment may be unsupportive of you seeking like a mental health diagnosis? Oftentimes they're the ones that agree that it is just you. And I heard it from my dad so many times. It was always, well, you need this or you need that, and then he would tell me this thing that's supposed to like fix the problem. For him it was salad. I wasn't sure if he was half joking or not. It must have something to do with the minerals and vitamins and whatever in whatever goes in salads. I don't know. I'm not a nutrition major, okay? But he would always be like, "Oh, you need this or you need that or you just need to do this." And he wouldn't understand that it doesn't matter the environment that I'm in. My mind is what's wandering. Because if it was the phone, then why is it that when I leave my phone in another room, I still can't focus? Why is it that when I have Forest running on my phone, I still can't focus? Why is it that when I'm in complete silence, I still can't Y'all seeing a pattern here? Like, I don't know, maybe it's just me. But yeah, so when everyone else around you keeps telling you about yourself, it's so hard not to believe them. And I fall complete victim to this. You think to yourself the most horrible four words you can ever think to yourself. What if they're right? I thought that to myself so many times and it was so detrimental. So now everybody gives you labels like, oh, you're disorganized. Oh, you're unmotivated. Oh, you're flaky. Oh, you're a procrastinator. Oh, you're all spacey. Oh, you never pay attention. And the all too common one, you're lazy. Honestly, I don't even know how I can still jokingly call myself lazy because I will admit, I am very lazy. It just doesn't have anything to do with my ADHD. It's more like I'm tired and I just don't want to do stuff. But when it came to the parts of my life that my ADHD and my depression and my anxiety were all affecting, it wasn't just laziness. Because one thing I always thought to myself, and I feel like I can guarantee that at least one of you has thought the same thing. I have always told myself, I want to do this thing. And if I could help it, I would do this thing because I don't want to be lazy. I want to be a good student. I want to get good grades, I want to start writing this essay 2 weeks in advance so that I'm not, so that I'm walking into class looking like, the cool kid in a K-drama when I hand in my paper because I wasn't stressed at all when I wrote that paper. Like I wanted to be that person. But if I could answer the questions of why can't you just do this thing, I wouldn't be having this problem. And it's the fact that I can't answer these questions that makes it harder. And as if it wasn't bad enough, unfortunately, getting the diagnosis doesn't always mean the labels are going to disappear. Because as long as people who believe mental health disorders don't exist still walk on this earth, we probably won't get them to go away. And even then, a lot of us have already internalized the labels because of them constantly being thrown toward us. So I would always I would berate myself like as if I were actually talking to myself in the same room. Why are you so disorganized? Why do you procrastinate so much? You know you should have started working at 10 a.m. Why is it that it's 5 p.m. and you're just now starting and this is due tomorrow at 8 a.m.? So I'm pretty sure that you guys have already uh realize the difference between guilt and shame. Guilt and shame, the difference between those two, just in case you haven't, is that guilt tells us that our actions are wrong, which is something that can be changed. You can always change your actions. But shame tells us that we are wrong. And I'll give you a hint on which one is productive and which one isn't. The one that's not productive keeps us from asking for help, from using tools that make working in spite of our mental health easier because we still feel like we should be able to do the thing without this help, so we're less likely to do it. And it perpetuates the mindset that all will ever be are failures. And that one about using tools that makes working in spite of our mental health easier because we should be able to do the thing, I struggle with this to this day. Like, y'all remember, y'all know that gif where that guy's like, to this day? Yeah, that's exactly how I feel. To this day, I still struggle with this. Because even though I know that I'm not like all of the people in the world that don't have ADHD, that don't have anxiety, that don't have depression, that have an executive functioning system and a prefrontal cortex that works like a charm. I'm not like these people, so I shouldn't be putting pressure on myself to try and get stuff done without all of these mental health tips. And I don't know if it's because maybe it'll make me feel accomplished and make me feel like, oh yeah, I was right all along, it's okay. I don't know if maybe that's what I want, but it's definitely still something that I struggle with. So, if there's anything that I want you to take away from this, it's that you're totally normal. You're not neurotypical, but you're still normal because it's normal for mental health to involve treatment and extra help and support for tasks that feel like they should be easier to complete. Because everybody else is shaming you for an impairment that they don't have. So they don't know what you're going through. And you didn't ask for that impairment, so it's not your fault. And I know a lot of you probably know this already, but I'm saying this for the people that have been saying, OMG, this is me, but it doesn't seem like they've gotten like a diagnosis or whatever. So like I just want you guys to know that like it's not just you. It's not your fault and you didn't ask for this. Um so the next steps, I've actually I feel like most of you have done this already. Um Jessica gives some steps for what to do if any of this like sounds like you, but you don't really know what to do. So the first thing that she says is to educate yourself. So basically do as much research as you can on all of the symptoms and repercussions of these mental health disorders. And then the other one is connect with people who understand what you're going through. So you can find people like on Discord, on Facebook, on Reddit, forums, and other private websites. You can share your experiences and get tips. Sometimes, honestly, tips from strangers can like change your world. I've had that happen to me a couple times. Um, and I know that that is the main reason why I got Discord. If any of you know who TBH Studying is on Tumblr or on Instagram, she has a Discord server, and I joined it. So Queen, yes, love me some her. Her Instagram is so aesthetic. Anyways, I joined Discord because she had a server, and I knew that first of all, I wanted I considered myself really lonely in sophomore year, and I think it was because of my depression. And so I wanted social interaction, but I didn't want to leave my room. So I ended up joining Discord, and her Discord was what led me to try and find other Discords that like focused around studying, because I was still trying to force my neurodivergent brain to function in neurotypical conditions. So I was thinking, oh, maybe if I'm just around other people who study, I'll feel bad, and then I can like actually study and I can actually do the thing. Woohoo, I've won, victory is mine, and yeah. Um so it did work temporarily because I was trying to use a strategy that wasn't really meant for my brain, at least not by itself. Um, but that first Discord server is what gave me the outlet to finding a million other Discord servers that have helped me a lot in finding out like what works for me. And I was here basically when For a Study Chat was created, and when they came when James and Andre came out with um when they came out with like the Pomodoro sessions and then the Pomodoro channel and then accountability, I was just like, I'm in my happy place. Because I was in study hall previously, but it always felt a little bit hard joining the Pomodoro fights because of the normal and competitive division. Because what I started doing was I started comparing myself, and oh my goodness, I swear, people with mental health issues, we are like legit, we have masters and PhDs in comparing ourselves to other people, because I was always like, oh, I'm not I'm not churning out, 250 palms in one palm fight, so like I'm not studying enough. And so that would actually make me spiral back to, oh, you had all of this time to study. If you start studying at like 10 a.m. and you stop studying at 6 p.m., right? That's a whole 8 hours. So somebody multiply 60 minutes by 8 and then divide it by 25, see how many palms you get, because that's a lot. Sorry, friendly dino, it's okay, it'll be recorded. Um, yeah, so I'm like, oh, you could have gotten so many palms in, and you could probably finally win normal division or competitive division, but you didn't. Why? Because you failed. And it was just like, I say it that way so it's humorous, but it was detrimental. I loved study hall, but I couldn't stop putting pressure on myself. Um so I found for study chat back when we had like, I don't know, like point 0.2 members, and then James and Andre brought out like a less intimidating version of the palm fights and accountability, and I I don't know, it felt less intimidating to me. Honestly, the accountability channel on Study Hall was not that intimidating. What was intimidating to me is people were putting in these long of stuff in accountability, and they were like getting it done, whereas I was constantly having to migrate tasks because because we used the bullet journal system, and so I was constantly having to migrate tasks and cancel them and postpone them, and oh, I just didn't get this stuff done even though I'm not really making moves to migrate it. I just didn't get done. Boss level accountability, yeah, basically. And I guess what makes for Study Chat's accountability server less intimidating than the one for Study Hall is that you get your own channel to put your accountability list and stuff in. And I think that's really crucial because now, instead of having to wade through everybody's like mile long lists of um yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about, Study Hall. Instead of having to wade through mile long lists of to-do lists that everybody else is getting done, I'm only focusing on mine. And so, I don't know if any of you guys know about that psychological experiment that they did, where they realized that people's aggression was increased by the mere presence of a weapon. So like nobody has to be holding it. It doesn't have to be loaded or anything like that. It just has to exist, and people's aggression instantly went up. I relate that to how I felt when I would see other people's like lists. But instead of being inspired to be productive, I felt intimidated by everybody else's productivity. And with Forest Study Chat, I'm only looking at my own, and it makes my brain breathe a sigh of relief when I look at my to-do list that has 3 things on it, and I'm like, oh, this is all I have to do. I can do this. And I'll go a little bit more in depth into those in future voice events, and so I can finally tell you guys what I've been trying to keep secret for so long. So, I'm pretty sure you guys know, and then it makes it easier for people to encourage you because all your stuff is in one place. Yeah, exactly. I don't have to scroll for an hour to try and find my list because 6 people woke up in the time that I posted my list and walked away. Um, so I'm pretty sure you guys know that we have a Forest Chinese Chat website, and it looks fantastic, by the way. So shout out to our web designers. But I am actually going to be one of the blog writers on that on the website. And the Google Doc that I typed this up, that I typed all of this up in, that is going to be posted on the blog. That's going to be the first post. Um, and this is going to be like, I guess you can say like a series of voice events and posts. So this first one was kind of like just an introduction, and then the next one, it's going to like not necessarily like build on that, but it would make sense to like read one post first and then like subsequent ones. So I guess just advise anybody of that if they come, if if you introduce them to the website and they like come across my posts, make sure you tell them like, hey, read this one first, and then you can read the other ones. But yeah, everything, the entire Google Doc that I made for this voice event, it's already been saved as a draft on our website. So as soon as I finish this voice event, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna post it. And the link to the video where I adapted all of the information has also been included in that post. And this is for people obviously this is for anybody, but I made this specifically with those who couldn't join the voice event, or maybe those who had to leave early, or those who couldn't hear the recording. I decided to do that specifically with them in mind because, like I said, I would hate for anybody that needs to hear this information to miss out on it. So this is me doing the best that I can to try and make sure that it gets to everybody. So this first voice event and this first post has kind of just been, you know, breaking the ice between people, hoping that you guys, have seen in this chat. Oh, it's not just me that's struggling. Like this is a real thing that happens. I'm not just lazy. So the next one, it's going to be more of like, I guess things. What is it that might be hindering you from doing the thing? I get that's the easiest way to put it. Um, as of right now, the next voice event will probably be either next Saturday or the Saturday after that. But if you don't see, I will always do the voice event before I put the post up. If it's something that is talked about in Fireside, the voice event will always happen before the post. So if you don't see the post, it's because the voice event hasn't happened. So basically, kind of like Discord saw it first type of thing. That's basically what's going to be going on. So I'm hoping this has that little emoji, yeah. So I'm hoping that this, guys, has given you some comfort that you're not alone, you're not struggling, you're valid, you're normal. And honestly, being neurotypical is more fun than being neurodivergent. I'm just gonna say, because we have strategies for getting stuff done that nobody else got. So ha. Even though it sucks 90% of the time, the 10% that it doesn't suck is like fantastic. So that's the. Oh, I'm sorry, Claude. It's okay. So that is the. I guess that is going to be the end of uh, that specific voice event. So now for the last 10 minutes, let's just open it up and do a Q&A. And then after 10 minutes, we will wrap things up. And if you guys hear singing, I'm so sorry. My room is directly above my mother's and she's singing her lungs out right now. So yeah. Yeah, Q&A session. You guys go, mother. Yeah. You guys can literally ask me about anything, within reason, of course.
Okay, well, thank you for doing this. I'm sure a lot of us in this call can totally relate to things that you said. So thank you so much for kind of breaking the ice here and having this platform for us to kind of have a safe space, I guess,
Yeah.
for this kind of stuff. So thank you so much. I just wanted to ask, a lot of time is spent talking about, I guess, the struggles and negative aspects of having to deal with these things. But I just wanted to ask you kind of what are some of the more positive triumphs and things like that that you've experienced, and how did the journey that you faced with all of these things make those triumphs feel so much better when you finally got around to them?
Okay, great question. So first of all, you're welcome. It felt really touching that you guys had enjoyed this. So, first question, some of the positives. One thing that's definitely a positive about ADHD is that when we actually, so one thing that I found, I don't remember if it was off of the blog or if it was off of the YouTube channel, but one of them mentioned that with ADHD, it's not so much that you can't focus on something, it's more that we keep trying to focus on everything at once. Um, but we also hyper focus, and sometimes that can be annoying when you're trying to focus on something that you actually have to do. But where it really comes in handy is when you're interested in something. So like for instance, I was in so the university that I went from, I'm actually transferring in fall, but the university that I used to attend, we have this club called Latin American Club, and I was in it. And we had it was kind of like a play, like a musical kind of. And So we had the actors, and then we had dancers. I was part of the dance ensemble, and I had to miss the first day of practice because I was out of town for an orthodontist appointment. But I love dancing like so much. So even though I missed an entire day and I had to catch up with people, I um I sat down and I watched the dance videos that the instructor posted on like Messenger for the group. And I did not stop watching those videos until I had it down. And by the time I was ready to go to practice with the others the next day, I knew the dances better than they did. And so that's always a positive thing with ADHD, is that when it's something that you're interested in, you can hyper focus and get it done faster and have like a better quality than anybody else. A really, I guess, a positive of anxiety, even though it kind of sucks to be scared, basically scared of everything, you have this sensory, your senses are heightened, and you have an awareness that other people may not have. It can actually be kind of scary how oblivious people are to their surroundings, but when you have anxiety, you don't tend to have that oblivion. I think it's safe to say that if a person with anxiety is oblivious, they're very comfortable in their environment. Um, so having that heightened awareness can help keep you safe actually in some situations. You look at this guy standing, across the way, and you're like, ooh, okay, maybe let me not walk past him because I don't know what his intentions are and he's just giving me bad vibes right now. A person without anxiety may not have that heightened awareness and may not think anything of it and may end up running into a situation where their life is in danger. Um, and I'm not saying that, well, if you don't have anxiety, stuff's for you, just get kidnapped. That's not what I'm saying at all. But I'm saying that heightened awareness can help keep us out of stressful and dangerous situations a lot faster than it would somebody without anxiety. And then I guess somebody with depression, and this honestly, this isn't exclusive to depression. This can happen with anxiety and ADHD too. Because with just about every mental health disorder, you have you feel your emotions so much more strongly than other people do, which sometimes can be negative, but can be really helpful when you're trying to make somebody feel better. Because in that moment, your focus is on making the other person feel better and helping them to realize that you're there for them and that they can come to you for comfort and security and stuff like that. That you're just going to listen, you're going to be sensitive to their emotions, um, that you're going to let them just get it out before you start trying to help them. So feeling your own emotions more deeply means that you have that heightened awareness for other people's emotions. So you may be more sensitive to other people's emotions than other people are. You may catch on to stuff faster than other people do. You know, sometimes sometimes people will say something in a conversation thinking that they're joking and stuff like that, and the other person is not, like, you can see it in their face, like, oh, like, this is making me feel really uncomfortable. Just the slight twist in the mouth, or the tiny wince in their eyes, like, ooh, that actually kind of hurt. A person who doesn't have an awareness of other people's emotions that strongly may continue joking. But then you enter somebody with mental health issues. They have that heightened sense of emotions. They can read people's faces, and they're like, oh, maybe I should do something to change the subject before this gets out of hand. Or, maybe I'll try and get this person out of the situation, like, hey, come over here, I want to show you something, and then get them out of the situation. So I feel like those are some of the positives, some of the advantages that people with mental health have. And that was my reasoning for saying what I said before when I was like, honestly, being neurotypical is awesome. It's for those positives that it can be awesome. So I've been told trust in myself has been lacking. Wait, let me process. Wait, is that a question or I'm confused? Austin's voice felt like a bass boost after Sayuri. I'm wondering how I can build trust in myself. So, I will tell you that it's not an easy process at all. Um, a major part of building trust in yourself is learning to forgive yourself, which is the hardest thing in the world to do. Think of it this way: when it comes to another person, it's a lot easier to forgive them for something horrible that they did if, as far as you know, that's the only like horrible thing that they've done. But if you've known them since like fifth, sixth grade, and you know all of the horrible stuff that they did, it's probably going to be a lot harder to have that forgiveness because you have those experiences in the back of your mind. And I think that's the reason why forgiving ourselves is so hard to do, because honey, we got receipts of our own selves from since birth, because we are ourselves and we know everything that we've done. So a lot of that trust is going to start from forgiving yourself and allowing yourself to make mistakes. And this is actually going to be mentioned in a future voice event and a future blog post. But a big part of having anxiety and dealing with like procrastination and stuff like that is being a perfectionist. So mistakes are not something that we can handle very well. Um, I've noticed that um, a lot of times it happens because of how other people respond to us making mistakes. Because sometimes they react way more strongly than is necessary for the mistake made. Mistakes are often the best teachers. Yeah, that is very true. Because I hate getting stuff wrong on a quiz, but I'm trying to get myself to be okay with it, because knowing what I made wrong on the quiz will help me focus on what I need to study so that I don't get them wrong on the test. Not mistakes, they're happy accidents. That's what my mom likes to call them sometimes. Um, being acceptive of my own mistakes was always so hard to do, because when I was in high school, my math teacher would constantly stress not to make silly mistakes, and she would use those words when she was pointing out our own mistakes. She'd always like, all of these careless mistakes, um, all of these silly mistakes and stuff like that. And I learned to basically hate anytime I made a mistake. But it's gonna take a lot of time forgiving yourself and making sure you remind yourself, okay, it's okay that I made a mistake. Now I know where I need to focus, and when I focus on this, I won't get it wrong on the next time. Another thing with building trust in yourself, you have to start small. So, for instance, if I want to trust myself to study for an hour, I got to start with 5 minutes. A lot of times we jump into the deep end without learning how to swim first. And so when we can't do this large task, we always, whenever, or 10 because of forest, yeah. Whenever we do these tasks, we always bite off more than we can chew, because we still view ourselves as should should be having the ability to do this thing without breaking it down so much. Because sometimes in high school, we would break stuff down to make it more manageable for us, and our teachers would be like, no, that's pathetic, like, it's not that hard, you can do this. So they would force us to go past a limit we weren't ready to go past yet. And so I think that can be part of the reason why we find it so hard to start slow, because we feel pathetic. So along with that forgiveness, and along with allowing ourselves to make mistakes, is also allowing ourselves to start small so we can build that trust in ourselves. Um, so I think that's the best way to go about it. Trying to write a book can be hard, but 10 minutes is doable. I aim for an hour a day per building. Yeah, that's exactly what you got to do. And I've heard that from so many other things. I'm gonna I I hate that I'm spoiling my own voice events and blog posts, but that's actually something that I was going to talk about in a future one, where you have to start with something. You have to start with an amount that feels doable for you. So basically, F what anybody else says. You're the one that's doing the work, not them. So you got to do what's right for you. And you got to start with an amount that's small enough where your brain is like, oh yeah, I can do this. Be it, and this was something that my ADHD coach told me a while. She has ADHD herself, and she was diagnosed as an adult as well. And she told me, girl, if that's 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 2 minutes, 1 minute, 30 seconds, 5 seconds, half a second, however small you have to start before your brain starts cooperating, do that, and then just gradually build on the next one. That's another thing too. Don't get too overconfident with yourself if you know you've been struggling for a while, because a lot of times what we end up doing is we get too confident, and then we just, we're like, oh, I can touch the ground on 3 feet. All right, let's jump into the 20 feet end. And then you're like, oh, I'm drowning. Okay, let's not do that. Yeah, that's something that we also tend to do because we get too excited to finally hit the goals that so we work for 5 minutes and we're like, oh, I can do this. Study session for like 2 hours. And you're like, whoa, wait, you're not Hermione Granger, honey. Chill out, slow down, Okay, you can do 5 minutes, but you don't even know if you can do 25 minutes yet. So why are you rushing to study for 2 hours, But yeah, so definitely it starts with forgiveness and then allow mistakes. And then, come on, Sayuri, it's right there. It's in your mind. What was the other one? I don't remember what the other one was, but it's okay because it's being recorded. So yeah, I can do palm length. Oh, okay. Bye, Sound. Or no, wait. No, I love Sounds. Oh, Delmo. Oh, okay. Y'all confuse me. Sayuri, your voice is so nice. Aw, thank you. I try. I'm glad to know that you guys like my voice because we're our own worst critics, so I hate the sound of my own voice. Okay. So, yes, absolutely. Everyone works at a different pace, and that's why I love Forest. Yeah. So, okay. So it's currently. Oh, question. There we go. You beat me to it. What do you do when your parents term mental disorders as an excuse for not achieving things? Um. So whenever my parents would do that, or teachers, that's true. Whenever my parents would do that, I would always tell them, you don't get to call my reason an excuse just because it's not the one that you wanted to hear. Because because a lot of times when people ask you, why can't you do this thing? What they want to hear is because I'm always on my phone, or because I'm lazy, or because I just didn't feel like it. And a lot of the times when you give them the answer like I just can't focus, or I don't know what's wrong, but something is wrong, when they say that doesn't make sense, what they're actually saying is, whoa, that's not how the script was supposed to go. You were supposed to tell me what I wanted to hear. You weren't supposed to tell me your actual reason. So if that doesn't get through to them, honestly, sometimes you just have to kind of ignore what your parents say about your mental health because they prove to you that they're not going to be supportive. So you may have to stop leaning on them for support, and finding other support systems, like I had mentioned with the Discord and Facebook groups and Reddit and other forums and other websites. It's a situation that I haven't really learned how to deal with yet. I think my parents just kind of it just finally made sense to them, like, oh, she's been like right all along. I have no idea when that switch was flipped for them. But it's very hard to get parents to realize, like, yo, like, I promise you, like, I'm not just trying. And I think it's because mental disorders, they're not things that you can see the cause of very easily. So, like, for instance, if somebody's limping, if somebody can't get somewhere, and you turn around and they're limping, it's like, oh, that's why they're taking so long to get here, because they can't walk properly. But with mental disorders, because we tend to say this, people tend to say this very degradingly, like, oh, it's all in your mind. Well, yeah, it's all in your mind. That's why it's called mental. um but that also means that you won't see the cause. You'll only see the symptoms. And that's something that's just always hard for parents to get their heads through. um Sometimes I wonder if they just maybe it's more about them, and they're just feeling like, oh, like, did I not raise them right, or how is this going to look when everybody else realize that I have, a broken child, because they, a lot of people with mental health disorders, if it onsets like later in their life, so like adolescence and up, and they never really had a reason to go to any type of doctor before, the parent may think like, oh, like, I've had this like essentially perfect child like all this time, how am I going to deal with, oh, my child is, not normal. Because they constantly see it as not normal, and a lot of times parents project their own fear of their own issues onto their child. So because oftentimes mental health disorders can be inherited. So if something's wrong with their child, that means that there might be something wrong with them, and that's not something that they can handle. And it sucks. It's an asshole move, but there's not a whole lot we can do about it. So I would say just tell them, you can't call my reason an excuse just because it's making you uncomfortable, and because it's not something that you want to hear. And if they still don't get it, then you honestly just have to break away from them in that aspect. So just don't talk about it, don't engage with them in conversations about mental health. Find your support somewhere else. And when they realize like, oh, like, you were actually being serious, then they might come around. Now, whether or not you would let them back in, or whether or not you would keep distancing them when they finally come to that realization, is totally up to you. um, I I let them back in, but I don't really talk about my mental health a whole lot unless it's with my mom, because she understands more. With my dad, not so much. He just doesn't get it. But yeah, sometimes that's what you have to do. Would increasing slowly, such as 5 minutes more each week? Yeah, that's perfect. Well, let me not say that's perfect, because that's not like if you do more or less each week or a different frequency that it's not going to be perfect. But that's a fantastic example of gradual increase. It's the same principle as chronic disorders as well. People tend to disregard everything that's not obvious to the eye. Yeah, that's exactly right. Also, I want to give you guys a tip. Whenever people say stuff like, oh, um for instance, people with ADHD, we get this a lot. um people always like to say, oh, I procrastinate too sometimes, ha ha ha, oh, you probably don't have ADHD. I literally had one of my friends tell me that. I was like, bitch, I got diagnosed. Like, I have the diagnosis papers. Like, I had somebody try and tell me that it probably wasn't ADHD. One thing I found on Reddit that you can probably tell them is, so because you get headaches, the rest of the world doesn't get migraines. Like, honestly, for them to understand, you gotta relate it to something that they already understand. Just like how with school, when you're studying something, you always have to um you always have to associate it to something that you already know, so that it makes sense. It sucks that they're like this, but they will only understand something in like in a context that makes sense to them. So like, people know that people get migraines and stuff like that. And I find it so funny that people accept the existence of headaches and migraines when those aren't things that you can see either. But when somebody's like, I have a headache or I have a migraine, everybody's like, oh, are you leave or etc. or whatever, everybody freak out. But when you're like, oh, my ADHD is acting up, everybody's like, oh, haha, I procrastinate too sometimes. I'm so distracted. And I'm just like, okay, anyways. I was texting my friend earlier, and he was like, "Yeah, OMG, I can't sleep today. Haha, I'm so insomniac." Haha. Oh, he doesn't know what insomnia is. Goodbye. Okay, so it is 11:14. I don't know what time that is in anybody else's time zone. I do know that it's 11:14 p.m. in Hong Kong time, because it's morning over here. So I will take one last question, and then we will wrap this up. And I'll let you guys know when I'm gonna have my next voice event. It's just that sometimes I don't know whether I'm gonna be out or at home on Saturdays, and I don't want my parents like coming at me like, "Oh, you're doing this thing and we were supposed to go out," you know. Yeah, like the things we think and feel are very much influenced by the environment we surround ourselves with. So if you're in an environment where your parents are terming mental disorders as an excuse and refusing to budge on it, finding somewhere else to use as a support pillar and being around those more frequently might be healthier for you. Yeah, exactly. That is exactly what I had to do. A lot of my friends have mental health disorders. Actually, I have 5 best friends, and every single one of them has some form of a mental health disorder. Um, One of them has social anxiety. My boyfriend has social anxiety and depression. My 3 girl best friends they all have anxiety and depression. And one of them has a learning disorder. And then my other guy best friend, he has anxiety, both generalized and social, I think, and depression. So having them as a pillar, oh yeah, I totally get what you're going through. And then I'll say something, and they're like, dude, yes, like, why is that so hard to understand? It honestly, having people around you that understand what you're going through and don't judge you for it is honestly so helpful to the recovery process and to the acceptance process that I think it's crucial. You gotta be with people that like understand what you're going through. It's like being comforted by your friends through a breakup. They understand that it hurts because you invested so much time into this other person and stuff like that. So having people that understand you in a mental health situation is honestly crucial. This is making me miss my friends so much. Aw. Well, you can always come over to Forest Study Chat when you need support, because you've seen how many people in this chat um, relate a lot with what's going on and with what I've talked about uh, in relation to myself and stuff like that. So you got a lot of people in this server that resonate entirely with what you're going through. So okay, so it is now 11:17. That technically wasn't a question. So if anybody, and it doesn't have to be about what we talked about, by the way. Oh, sorry, I was talking through it. So if anybody, it doesn't have to be about mental health, but I can take one more question, and I'll only go until 11:20. It's 11:18, and then I will wrap. I've been living with my grandparents for a couple months, so I haven't seen my friends. But yes, thank you so much. This community is so lovely. I'm happy that you have found. I'm happy that you found this community, and that's for you. Okay, nobody is typing, so I guess I'm going to wrap this up. So thank you guys so much for coming to the first edition of Fireside. And like I said, as soon as I come off this voice event, it's gonna be a couple minutes on the computer. But as soon as I come off of this voice event, I will post the I will post I will post the blog post on the website, and it has a link to the YouTube video that I found. Um, a lot of subsequent voice events and blog posts are going to be adapted from videos belonging to the channel that the YouTube video I've linked in the blog post is from. But feel free to go ahead and watch any of her other videos if you would like to. You definitely don't have to wait until I talk about it to watch any of the YouTube videos, because honestly, a lot of her advice is really helpful. But yeah, this has been Fireside with Sayuri. I really hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will see you guys in the next one.